Welcome back to Star Narratives, the podcast. This is accessible and relatable astrology that teaches you how to support your emotional well-being using the wisdom of the zodiac. I'm your host, Natha Perkins. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another week. My name is Natha, and we are going to be looking at that transition between Virgo and Libra today. So if you are new to this podcast, I'm just taking everybody through all of the 12 astrological archetypes from Aries all the way to Pisces as the sun is in those signs. So you can go all the way back to Sagittarius season. That's when I started. And whether you are a Sagittarius, a Virgo, whatever, it doesn't matter what your sun sign is. I'm teaching astrology as a self-awakening tool. If you are wanting to explore who you are, you're having a spiritual awakening, you're just wanting to feel better, you're wanting to heal something, whatever, you can look at the astrological archetypes and it gives you this map for your psyche and for all of your issues, for all of your gifts, your skills. We are all really similar in that we're human. And so this astrological map gives you a straight shot into what is happening with your own internal system. And then, of course, what's happening collectively, which always impacts you. So I spend 4 or 5 weeks on every single sign, talking about a different facet of each sign. And believe me, everybody has all of the facets. We are always acting them out in one way or another. Sometimes we're acting out the dark side and we need a little help. And sometimes we're acting out the light side, the high side. And then we know, yeah, I'm mastering this. And I think that's the whole point, is that we're in a time where there are a lot of wounded people on the planet and wounded people that have the capacity to see themselves and to see their wounds instead of just acting on autopilot and wounding everybody else in the process. So the more that you are able to self-inquire, more that you're able to see yourself clearly, see your shortcomings, see your absolute amazing gifts, the better off we all are. So if you have found your way to this podcast, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And as always, anything online works on an algorithm. So like, comment, subscribe. It depends on where you're listening to this. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform or you're watching it on YouTube, there are ways to boost the algorithm simply by interacting with the post. That way we can get more people into this kind of information. Astrology is such a cool system for understanding not just your own human psyche, but that of the people that you love too. So join me. And today we are leaving Virgo season and we're moving into Libra. So I'm going to talk about, like, what does that mean? How does that show up for you in your life? If you've missed any of the Virgo episodes, go back and listen to them. At the end of every one of these episodes, I do a really brief, about 10-minute or so astro forecast that talks about the actual astrology that's happening collectively, that we're all underneath. So this is multi-layered, where you look at your own self, at your own experiences, tendencies, etc. And then you get the extra layer of what's happening collectively and how that might be impacting you, how to work with it. All right, so just begin by taking a deep breath wherever you are, tuning into your physical body, just coming back to yourself for a moment. This might be the first time all day that you have consciously brought your attention to your body and your breath. So do that for a minute and just notice how you are feeling. Virgo is very busy energy, and it is the energy that's connected to the nervous system. And our nervous systems get thrown out of whack really easily, even with just a certain thing that we read online or a certain phone call that we get, or even just the way that our mind takes us into all of the problems and everything that needs to be solved, wanting the approval of people, etc. So we've covered that over the last few weeks. So our nervous systems during Virgo season can get a little bit activated. And now, as we're moving into Libra, so what happens is that we start at Aries and we go through Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and then Virgo. And those are all the really personal signs. We're dealing with our own interpersonal stuff. Right at about Virgo is when we begin to see the potentials of other people. We want to help. We need to work. We want to problem solve. We want the approval. And then we hit Libra season. And that's when it goes fully into, oh, I am a part of a society. I need to be in relationship with all these people. So while Libra is largely looked at as a sign of intimate partnership, it's also about all of the partnerships that you have, everybody that you're trying to interact with. And it's mostly people that you're somewhat close to. We go into Aquarius, and that's when it's like the people in the world, the people that are passing us on the road and getting in our way at the grocery store. But with Libra, it's where we start to look at our own personal relationships and our impact on those relationships, how we show up in those relationships, what kind of dynamics we create. And then, of course, how do our relationships affect us? How do we change ourselves and morph around a little bit so that we can please our partners or maintain a certain kind of status? So with Libra, we also start to become very interested in our status. How do we look? Are we appealing? Are we attractive? And if you think about your transition between being a child and going into adolescence, that's when this Libra stuff really starts to hit, because you're looking around and you're thinking, well, I want to be pretty enough, and I want to be strong enough, and I want the attention of the people that I perceive to really have the status to like really have what I want. And so Libra is ruled by Venus, and it is a cardinal sign. It's an air sign. All of the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, are all the relational signs. It's where we're learning to communicate, where we're learning to see how to attract what we want, and we're learning how to just deal with people. We all learn somewhere along the way that the easier our relationships are, the better everything flows. And so as we transition between Virgo, where, yeah, we're kind of striving to like look good. We want the people, the parents, the teachers, the partners, we want them to see us as good in some way. We want them to acknowledge that what we think and what we know is right. But then we get a little bit deeper into that in Libra, because that's where we start to really want to be accepted. We want to be popular. We want to be beautiful. We want to see and be seen. So as we transition into Libra season, that's something that you can begin to inquire. Who is it that I am generally trying to get their attention? What is the demographic that usually makes me feel like I need to look good? With Libra, it's where we begin to notice our appearance. We begin to notice where we feel lack in the way that we look. We've been dealing with so much Libra energy over the past few years because we have had the South Node traveling in the sign of Libra. And before that, the North Node was traveling in the sign of Taurus. Taurus and Libra are the two signs that Venus rules. So you can go back to the Taurus season episodes. Taurus is much more about abundance and our relationship to ourselves. So with Taurus, we're looking around trying to figure out how to create wealth, how to create enough of what we need, and then also how we work with our relationship with our own self-confidence. Are we confident and secure enough to get what we want? Do we believe in ourselves? Then we bring it to Venus as the ruler of Libra, and that's where we bring in a lot of other people. And you know yourself that your sense of worthiness can be incredibly impacted by how other people seem to perceive you. And so back to this South Node traveling through Libra, what we've all been working in our own personal process are these questions around what is valuable. Do we need to look a certain way? Do we need to wear a certain kind of clothing, a certain brand, drive a fancy car, have a certain amount of followers, a certain amount of social status in order to be valuable? And these are really important questions, because as we are coming to understand ourselves on a deeper level, and if you're listening to this podcast, 100%, you are trying to understand yourself. It's like, it's so exhausting always putting on a front and scurrying around and trying to do everything that culture and society deems is attractive, appealing, acceptable. And we are all starting to see that on the deepest level yet. we're looking around and we're saying, wait a minute, who am I trying to impress? And if we aren't self-inquiring, we are on autopilot, basically back in adolescence, trying to impress the people in our class. And we can all think back to adolescence and think, oh my God, that was a really exhausting period of time. So just take a breath into that. Take a breath into remembering what it was like when you did not have the tools, the skills, the support, the context to understand that your worth and value was not dependent on how you looked and how many friends you had and who you were friends with. Because you have come so far and you have separated not only from those literal people, but from many of your old beliefs around how you need to appear to people in order to have value. And I think that as many of us go through these stages of life where we have relationships and we have breakups, we have children, we have different careers, we make different friends, go see different parts of the world, that we reframe our idea of what is actually valuable. And sometimes it's good just to go back and look and say, look at how far I've come. It's more important now than ever to differentiate from what culture and society thinks is the right way. We find that to be very empty. We find it to be pointless. Why should we work 70 hours a week in order to make enough money to buy a fancy car to drive around so that strangers think we're important? Why should we hate ourselves every time we look in the mirror because we feel like we have extra pounds on our body or we have weird hair or wrinkles or whatever? Why does it matter? Why would we indulge in the self-hatred of wishing that we looked a different way, wishing that we were a different way, that we had more of something because we want to impress strangers? And social media has really, on one hand, it is very easy to slip into that fantasy world of everybody is doing better than me. And there's something, especially right now, as we're transitioning between this Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces, which, by the way, is like the biggest illusion energy ever. So we've all been under these spells, different kinds of spells about different kinds of things for many years. But next year, Neptune is going to start dancing into the sign of Pisces. And so a lot of that illusion is going to continue to break up. I would imagine that the illusions are already breaking up for you as you begin to see, how much do I miss out on in terms of self-love and self-respect and a natural comfort in my body, in my experience, and trust in my life? How much of that am I missing out on by falling under the spell of these old things that we were taught? This keeping up with the Joneses, this looking good from the outside, as long as you're pretty, young, thin, rich, whatever. How much of my true authentic self am I out of touch with because I have prioritized the attention and respect of strangers? So this is really deep work, and we'll be exploring a lot of the different facets of it as we progress through Libra season. But Libra is cardinal energy, and Libra rules by being nice and pleasing and easy. And so there's always something too connected to wanting to look good, wanting to have enough money that does easily equate to being pretty, keeping things nice. But as we'll talk about when we look at the Aries Libra connection, Aries is all about personal strength and advocating for self. If you can easily go back into your own experience in adolescence, what you find, what you see, what you remember is that this was a time where you were never really advocating for yourself very well. It was very easy to slip into the group think and the looking around and going along with everybody else, the peer pressure. And with Aries, it is the opposite of that. It is you standing strong in your own values. So we are like really in the thick of this because these nodes in the sky right now are in Libra and Aries. And if you're listening to this at some point in the future, just think back to 2023 and 2024 and think about how much of a shift you had between the part of you that wanted to fit in and not only fit in, but the part of you that like wanted attention for being so beautiful and being so whatever, versus the part of you that eventually says, that is just an energetic drain for me. Because if I'm just following what other people want me to do, and I'm just a follower, or I'm just a people pleaser, or I'm just trying to look beautiful for strangers, like what's the point? There's no point in any of that. So this is part of our evolution into this next version of this beautiful world that we're all in, is that we are all looking around and giving less of our authority over to the powers that be, all of the powers that be, even all the way down to the people that are advertising to us, telling us, you need to lose weight, you need to be less wrinkly, you need to buy this brand of shoes in order to be cool, you need to travel to this place and take pictures of it in order for people to know that you're successful. The powers that be, as we have been moving with Pluto going in and out of the final degrees of Capricorn, all of the powers that be are up for question and up for review. And so we're talking about Libra over the next month. And now we're looking at the powers that be that say you have to look good from the outside. You have to be desirable. You have to make people want you. You have to make people think that you're successful. And then you know you've made it. Do you have a lot of followers? Good. Now you know you've made it. And we're going to be questioning that. We're already questioning that, let's be honest. So take a deep breath into how it feels in your body, just to have those recognitions that it is appropriate and even necessary at this point in your personal process to really make this work a priority. This work around watching how easily you can form into whatever it was, first of all, that you learned in adolescence. What was really popular? What were the popular people, popular celebrities, the popular mentalities? What were those? And what did you learn from them in terms of how you look and how to be a good partner, how to gain the respect of people? What was it that you learned? Because you carry a lot of that still. And then continue to just sense into that feeling of permission to start to drop those old beliefs, to start to really see how far you've come and how strong you are. It reminds me of when women have children, then they have stretch marks. And of course, stretch marks are considered terrible. You're not supposed to have that, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at those stretch marks and you think, wow, like this is proof that I actually brought another human into the world. With Libra, we begin to look at this idea of balancing out the scales, of justice, of fairness, of diplomacy, as we easily slip into, I don't look as good as I should, or I don't have as much money as I should, or I don't have as many people that think I'm amazing as I should. That part of the remedy is in taking a minute and just tuning in to, I've really come a long way. Like, I want to be fair to myself here. I want to really look at this through the lens of my balanced scales, because if I still looked like I was 20, if I was 20 again, would I have had all of the life experiences that I've had, the highs, the lows, the joys, the wins? And the answer is no. Because remember, with the cardinal signs, and that is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, these are the bosses, these are the leaders of the zodiac. And so every time that we come onto a sign that is cardinal, we look around and we say, whoa, I have to transform into the leader here. I have to transform into the leader of my kingdom. So in order to be a good Libran leader, it becomes so much less about wanting to look good for others, caring about things like age spots or social status. And what we want to prioritize is the fact that we are inherently valuable no matter what. It doesn't matter what we look like, how much we have, what we lack. When we are focusing on living a life well lived within integrity that encompasses the morals and the values of justice and diplomacy, balance and fairness, that there is a value that is here as a steady force within each of us, regardless of how other people perceive us. And certainly, I think we can all agree that as we get older, we become less concerned with how much somebody has or what they look like, because we understand that some of the dearest people in our lives, some of the wisest teachers that we don't have celebrity status. They are not rich and famous. They are not constantly bragging about how much they have, how beautiful they are, who they're connected with. So this is where we enter into Libra season with the understanding that we're letting go of things that are empty, things that are meaningless, and the things that we have valued in our past that no longer really have the worth. And we're making way for the true value, the value in seeing ourselves and the value in honoring and appreciating the people that we're in relationship with that we just thoroughly enjoy. All right, let's talk about the astrology of the week. We begin on Monday. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see the charts. And if you're listening on the podcast platforms, I will walk you through it. We had our equinox yesterday when the sun entered Libra. Venus also entered Scorpio. So when we have these planets that enter into new signs, there is a collective shift. The equinox is powerful as well because it speaks to the balance where the day and the night are essentially the same length. So this question of is life in balance and what is out of balance becomes a loud one. We are in the middle of eclipse season and things are showing up, things are leaving, we are getting the themes of what we are dealing with. And because this eclipse season encompasses the equinox, we're going to be looking at our own personal questions around balance and equilibrium, at least for the next 6 months and probably more. Venus entering into Scorpio brings a whole new energy. We haven't had any planets in Scorpio for a while. And Scorpio is that energy of depth. It is ruled by Pluto. Of course, we've been talking endlessly about Pluto as it's journeying back and forth between the two signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. But Venus coming into Scorpio lends this whole fresh new energy. Venus is at detriment in Scorpio. It does not love to be there. It loves to be in Taurus, which is across the sky. But with Venus in Scorpio, somehow we are initiated into more mystery. And I would even go so far as to say that within that mystery, within that desire to seek out the answers, that there's a potency that shows up as we are questioning this sense of value. What is valuable? And Venus in Scorpio invites us to go really deep, not just, am I valuing my looks over things that are more important, but what's at the core? Maybe what's at the core of some of my lack of self-confidence? What is at the core of why I have always felt like I had to be beautiful enough or rich enough in order to have value? So it could bring up those questions for you. And it could also just bring up questions around, wow, if I was really excited about discovering myself and discovering my new values, and I was willing to be a little bit edgy with it and go deeper than I've ever been, what would that look like? So this can feel like an exciting energy and one that really gives us an opportunity to play around with some deeper themes. You know, deeper themes are always interesting. They may not hold things that we love, and they may bring up things that are fearful, but at least they're interesting. On the 26th, Mercury transitions into Libra. This brings the mind into those Libran questions. I think this will be supportive. We also see here that the sun is about to touch the south node, which means that Mercury will touch the sun soon and also the south node. So there's a lot of purging that's going to come. So I would suggest starting to look at how your mind communicates to you when it comes to these Libra issues. What does your mind have to say about looking good, being beautiful, looking successful? And can you see that for what it is without falling under the spell quite so quickly. On the 29th, we see the sun making that conjunction with the south node. So this might bring about a situation for you where you once and for all kind of dump some old belief that you have about your value. Or you might dump a relationship that is not in alignment. You might begin to see your own self-worth through a different lens. I would say that anytime that a planet, especially the sun, meets with the south node, that you're being asked to look at your comfort zones, and especially the comfort zones that are not serving you. So any old beliefs that you acquired about yourself, especially during adolescence, right? Like let's just look at the fact that we get a lot of our Libran ideas really cemented in our adolescence, because that's when we are so fragile and we feel so at a loss. We don't know ourselves, and we look to the quote unquote people in power for what is popular and how to be accepted. So you might have some flashbacks to adolescence. You might understand that you are still holding thought bodies that relate straight back to whoever you were dealing with when you were in middle school and high school, that still to this day impact your sense of self, your sense of self-worth. And then, of course, with the South Node, it's always about dumping stuff. It's purging, it's letting it go. It's recognizing that this is completely unnecessary moving forward, and that this North Node in Aries, all about the self-advocacy, is the stronger energy. So the sun and Mercury aren't technically going to connect until Monday, but we are rolling up on this epiphany day as Mercury meets with the sun. All sorts of downloads are coming in. So like we talked about in Gemini season and in Virgo season too, like Mercury is such a powerful influence in our lives because it is our mind that drives us to do things because we perceive things to be a certain way. And so this is, again, a good week to really work on detaching yourself from any of the ruminating / autopilot / old ways of thinking, so that you can clear the space for what is new and what is fresh, and really an experience where you're able to appreciate yourself and see your own value as separate from anything that some stranger or some person from your past thinks about you. Okay? All right, I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you all next week. Thanks so much for joining me. If you have enjoyed what you have heard, like, subscribe, leave a message, leave a review. You can find me on Instagram at Electra_astrology or on my website at electraastrology.com.